Thank you, Chair. Turning to, you've already mentioned the warm homes discount and some other support that there is out there. I just wonder what your views were on a social tariff. I know in the utility sector, particularly the water industry, it's a bit haphazard how it's applied, but there are different levels of social tariffs that different companies apply. What's your view on how that could be applied better to the energy sector?
Well, we have had social tariffs in the past, and then we moved to the sort of consistent policy in the warm home discount scheme. When we had those social tariffs previously, it was a big concern, hugely varied, the level of support that was available from different suppliers. Often it wasn't very generous at all for some suppliers, and it didn't trace need at all. We wouldn't want to move back there, and we'd want to sort of evolve, I think, what we've got in terms of the warm home discount scheme to be fit for purpose moving forward. I think the big opportunities for a social tariff are to not only either bag some of the benefits that we've got now with a discount for like the warm home discount scheme, which provides all the support up front, but provide an ongoing reduction in running costs for particularly households on prepayment meters, for example. That would be very welcome. But also, I think this point around the depth of support needs to be grappled with. I mentioned earlier, £150 rebate has only gone up from £140 in 10 years when energy prices have increased by £700 in the last couple of years. So it's this depth of support issue which we're going to need to grapple with. It's very difficult, obviously, at the moment to make that argument to the Treasury, but potentially a hybrid between maybe consumers contributing some money towards this social tariff, as well as the Treasury providing some support, can be brought together in a way which means that we can provide meaningful levels of support for the poorest households. And as Anthony said, give that bridge to them having their house renovated and reducing their exposure to these energy costs in the longer term through energy efficiency measures.
So a social tariff is potentially really important. You can do it by giving a lump sum, or you can do it by essentially having cheaper energy, cheaper unit rate, cheaper standing charge, whatever. Probably the advantage of the latter might be that at a time when you need energy, you're paying less for it. And for those who are poorer, they're more likely to be on prepayment meters or paying on receipt of a bill. They will get the reduction exactly when they need it. So that there are advantages either way, but the key thing is they get it at the time they need it, and they get a meaningful reduction.
We recently had an evidence session in Cardiff where we spoke to a number of stakeholders, and one of them mentioned that a significant cost is the standing charge to fuel bills. Clearly 50p a day, 60p a day, regardless of what energy you've used. What's your view in terms of how that could be baked into a social tariff and how that could be helped to support?
So the standing charge, if you don't use much energy, the standing charge is really enormous. If you use lots of energy, for example, if you've got a health vulnerability, actually the standing charge is quite good value compared to the unit rate. So actually you kind of need tariffs with and without standing charge, and the cheapest one for that customer is something, frankly, the supplier should be able to work out and put you on. So really, standing charges can be really bad for some people, but for a minority of people, they can be beneficial, and you should cater for both if you can.
We have said in the past about an obligation. We said in the past about an obligation on suppliers to move customers to the cheapest tariff that they have available, and that should be something that Ofgem could require of suppliers to do that. I think the unit rate approach is absolutely vital because, as we've said, if you've got high energy needs and because of a health condition, then actually having that is important. On standing charges, there's so much in the standing charges which we could look at. Is the standing charge the best place for that? If we're talking about network, the investment in the networks and transmission, is paying for that, through the standing charge the best thing to do, or are the better approaches through investment or through general taxation that would then bring down the standing charge and bring down people's energy bills?
We've got a particular, so at the moment, I'm sure you're aware, but Ofgem are consulting, or finished consulting, on whether or not they're going to allow customers to opt into a zero-rated standing charge. This was their great proposal after a year of thinking about this issue. One thing it doesn't do, sadly, is address the plight of households on prepayment meters that accrue these standing charges, irrespective of whether or not they're using any energy in the home at all. We sadly see, as an advice provider, households that have racked up £300, £400, £500 on the standing charge on gas in particular, because they haven't heated their home for months, if not years. That is an impossible situation for people, resulting in no hot water, no space heating. It's very, very, very difficult. We think that they should change the way that debt accrues on that on that meter, to put it at the back of the meter, which means that it could be negotiated and spent down. Repaid without needing to be repaid in full, which is the case at the moment, which is staggering that we're applying that sort of Victorian approach to in the 21st century, to be frank.
Just turning in to support that energy companies could provide, such as the social tariff or similar schemes. Clearly, support for pensioners or vulnerable people has to be paid for by someone, either the state or energy companies, but someone's going to pay, bill payers. So I'm just thinking the most efficient way of delivering that could be directly through the energy companies. That would involve bill payers, other bill payers, paying more on their own bills to essentially subsidise that support. But it could be a less bureaucratic way of delivering support. What's your views on that?
They already do subsidise other bill payers, so there's about £18, I think, is the current price per customer per year for the bad debt allowance. It could be more than that now. So there's already a sort of degree of cross-subsidisation that already goes on. It's what that money's used for. At the moment, there's little transparency about those debt allowances and what they get spent on. If they were targeted in this way to, say, write off gas arrears for those customers, and help them get back on supply, that would be a very good thing, and obviously have a wider social benefit which would more than offset the upfront cost that someone's got to pay, and I accept that someone would be paying.
So a tariff paid for by energy companies is a tariff paid for by consumers. So I will pay, let's just say, £20 on my bill to subsidise somebody who's fuel poor. That fuel poor person will also pay £20 from their bill to subsidise themselves. If it was paid for through taxation, I would be paying probably more than £20 and they would probably be paying nothing. Which is fairer? I would suggest the latter. Whether it's practical at the moment in the current environment, I don't know.
Would that latter approach be more bureaucratic and more costly actually to administer than the energy companies themselves delivering that support?
Well, if the energy companies do it themselves, then generally speaking, the energy consumers pay. The company passes on those costs through a price cap. So it's a question of how consumers pay and what's the fairest way of doing it. And I would suggest the fairness here might outweigh the bureaucracy.
You can have hybrids. So in the course of the energy crisis, obviously a lot of tax-funded support was provided to the energy companies that then administered the schemes on behalf of government. So you can have this sort of crossover, and that's something you might get to with a social tariff, for example.
I think just to kind of the warm home discount, for example, that is paid for by the bill payers. So sometimes when ministers say our warm home discount scheme, we are slightly annoyed. It's actually our warm home discount scheme that we're all paying for and we're all helping people with. So, so that approach does exist. But I think, just to add the point, and we'll write to the committee on this, but, to look at the kind of hybrid models where, the wider energy industry, so network firms, transmission firms, market traders also pay into that and make a contribution, given the amount of profits that they're making.
Just finally, I think Energy UK have suggested some proposals around those that use electric heating. And perhaps adjusting the levies and tariffs around that to support. Clearly that's an additional cost to them. Have you got any views on that?
I think one of the challenges, obviously, on electric heating, especially at the moment, is around the RTS switch off and the radio tele switch off. And I think all efforts around that should be focused on making sure that we're not in a situation on the 1st of July whereby consumers are left without hot water or heating because the RTS rollout hasn't been worked. So I think we need to, for those who are on, because people who are on electricity only, they do face often higher costs. That there is, again, in terms of when we're looking at housing type, heating type as well should come into that, because there are additional vulnerabilities for those who are on electric heating and the effectiveness of those heaters.
If you want to increase the amount of electric heating, I think what Energy UK is proposing can be a good measure. I would not necessarily conflate moving to electric heating and getting towards net zero with addressing fuel poverty. They are sometimes quite different things.
I think supporting households with the running costs, ongoing running costs for heat pump will be necessary, potentially by less if we do it effectively and we install those heat pumps effectively and we have high quality standards. Supporting those households which are electrically heated will also be really important in that debate. I'll let Ned talk about the virtue of his policy in a minute, but I would be nervous about just assuming that a current policy like the Warm Home Discount Scheme, even if it was doubled, would be sufficient to offset the impact of the distributional impact that such a sort of radical change might have. And we'll need to look carefully at the distributional impacts across all types of consumers, but particularly the most vulnerable.
Thank you.
Thank you.